I read those books because I was in philosophy too back in those days, and I remember when that book first came out. I was still actually in college, and then I went to graduate school here in philosophy at Tulane. I very well remember, and I also remember all the hooplas that developed between the sordid side of Ayn Rand's what became labeled by many people a cult. And are you ever heard it called a cult, objectivism?
Well, I haven't heard that term, but I do know.
Well, some people, including Nathaniel Branden, when he split with her, that's one of the things that he accused.
There were internal difficulties among that group.
That made Bitter look moral. But her views on ethics, I think, are the ones that I was totally uninterested in the economic side. Laissez-faire, I'm totally laissez-faire about laissez-faire capitalism, but you picked up on that. I was interested in the epistemology side, the philosophical side, and the ethics question. Now, the epistemology, I don't know if you're even familiar with the epistemology of objectivism, is almost, so common sense realism almost. I mean, basically it says there is a physically real world out there that we perceive. It's very almost naive somehow in its initial presentation. At least this impression I had. I haven't read that. I read the Bible every year, but not found it.
Well, there's a lot of antagonism toward Ayn Rand and her position. Part of it being the book she wrote called The Virtue of Selfishness. And in contemporary society, people don't think selfishness is a virtue. Does that enter into any of your thinking?
Well, Adam Smith had this view, the invisible hand. And in the invisible hand, we're all selfish or self-interested, and we pursue our self-interest. And through the mediation of the free enterprise system, we are led as if by an invisible hand, Adam Smith thought it was the hand of God, to do that which is in the public interest or in the public good. And certainly Ayn Rand would favor the Adam Smith view of the invisible hand, and I certainly do. I think that if we have marketplaces and capitalism and private property, and people are allowed to seek profits, they will therefore pursue the public interest. Let's take an example. We had Katrina, and after Katrina, there were all sorts of shortages of flashlight batteries and orange juice and things like that people needed, and there was price gouging. Prices were rising for gasoline, whatever you really needed in these emergencies. And the people who were engaging in price gouging were doing it out of selfish motivations in order to make profits.
They were capitalist entrepreneurs.
And Blanco said that we're going to put these people in jail. They're abominations. They're horrible people because, they're taking advantage of people. But the insight of Adam Smith and Ayn Rand and other advocates of free enterprise, such as myself, is that higher prices have a positive role to play. On the one hand, they have this function of making sure that everyone gets a little bit of the orange juice or the water or whatever you're waiting for. Because if the price is the old price of, say, $1 a quart for whatever it is, then the first guy in line is going to grab a lot of it. But if it's $10, $20, he's going to say, well, maybe I'd better just take a little bit, and that way you leave room for other people. So it has a rationing function. Secondly, higher prices call forth supplies from Kentucky or Massachusetts or California or wherever else, which brings this stuff to New Orleans. So these high prices are a signal. They're like a cry in the wilderness for help. We raise the prices. We're saying, help us. Stuff will come in and we will ration it in a more reasonable way. And this is all the functioning of selfishness working out. And it's certainly, as you can see, in the public good. Whereas Blanco and the people who were against the price gouging were actively, maybe acting out of good motives, but I think economic ignorance. And, what is that? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
That's a saying. Yes.
They had good intentions, but they don't know any economics, and they don't realize the virtue of selfishness, if we can get back to your question. And this is a perfect case in point of seeing the benefits, as Ayn Rand brilliantly saw, of free enterprise.
Well, now, you are teaching economics at Loyola University, which is a Jesuit institution, and you said at the opening of this show that you are an atheist. How do you get the Ayn Rand type material into your classes?
Well, in my intro economics courses, I require Atlas Shrugged as one of the readings. That's one way I get it in there. I don't think there's any incompatibility with the Jesuits and being an atheist. I teach economics. I don't teach philosophy or religion, so it really wouldn't be a confrontation. I don't even mention it. I mention it here because we're secular humanists here. We're atheists here. So, and Ayn Rand was certainly an atheist.
Yes,
she was a devout atheist. Actually, I slightly deviate from her in this. While I'm an atheist, I'm sort of a fan of religion.
Explain that.
And the reason I'm a fan of religion is I see the main enemy of humanism, the government. I see the government as evil. And I noticed that in the Soviet Union, they were quite correct in lashing out at two institutions that were in great competition with them. One was the family, and the other was religion. The family, they would try to get kids to tattle on their parents, which is a way of breaking up the family. And certainly their views on religion were very critical. So my thinking here is the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
And the state is the great enemy, and if the state picks the family and religion as its enemy, well, then the family and religion are my friends, and I'm supporters of them, because we are having a struggle over the hearts and minds of the populace. And on the one hand, we have the state, and on the other hand, we have religion. Although in history the two have not always been opposite, but I see them as opposite because I see religion as a voluntary institution, whereas I see the state as coercive. Here I have some slight differences with Ayn Rand, too. She favored limited government. I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I believe that the best government is that government which governs least, and least of all is none. So I see the state as an evil institution.
Dave,
how do you feel about public education?
Oh, public education is the spawn of the devil. I mean, actually, public education is a very anti-Catholic kind of a thing. The way we had the onset of public education was a Protestant attack on Catholics. This was in the late 19th century, 1880 through 1910. That's where public education started. And at that time, you had a lot of immigrants coming from Italy and Ireland and other Catholic, Poland, places like that. And the Protestants said that, these people are a spawn of the devil. They have allegiance to the Pope. Therefore, we've got to stop them.
The Know-Nothing Party and Americanism and they actually burned down convents and places like that in this period of time. It's not many people know that, but
they were good economists, and they realized that if you make people pay twice for education, once for private education and once through taxes for public education of other people's children, then there'll be less allegiance to their evil Catholic schools, private schools.
Right.
And they didn't have enough power to ban them outright. If they could have, I think they would have. But all they could do is say, well, we'll have public education, and we'll promote, allegiance to the state or what have you. No, I'm a bitter opponent of public education, not only because it's anti-Catholic, but because it's coercive. Okay. What we're doing is forcing you to pay money to educate your kids. Suppose you don't have kids. Why should you be paying for the education of other people's children?
Any entrepreneur will benefit from a better educated public, don't you think? If you're looking for workers, having to train them yourself versus having them already trained, where they can read and write. I don't think it's natural for human beings to seek reading and writing. I've read The Virtue of Selfishness, and that was my main problem with it. Is that there seems to be no admission that entrepreneurs can benefit by government intervention, and education seems to be the best case of that in my mind.
Well, you're quite right. Employers will benefit from an educated public, but they'll also benefit from a clothed public, from a fed public. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that we have to socialize food and clothing and everything else? I mean, we all benefit from everything. We all benefit from the fact that we took showers or baths this morning. Do we have to have socialist soap also? I mean, that's just a recipe for total socialism.